As the girls realize in the past that they may not get rescued anytime soon, Natalie and Misty in the present learn about one of the people who did survive and what happened to them. To begin, we need to talk about Tasia and her connection to the spirit world. The main reason we're talking about this is because when it comes to that symbol that has yet to be fully fleshed out, we can almost assume that maybe Tasia's involved. The reason why is when Tasia was a little girl and her grandmother was still alive, her grandmother, when she was with her, saw this being that didn't have eyes, and apparently that being took her grandmother's eyes out. And then when you put Sammy into the situation, Sammy is seeing some type of ghostly spiritual woman or whatever, and she's haunting him. And even when Sammy gets in trouble and he has to get his doll taken away, that spirit might have mangled up his doll and threw it down in the basement. So with that in mind, it kind of makes you wonder when it comes to Tasia, while she directly doesn't seem to get affected by these spirits, could it be that people around her do, kind of like if she's cursed in a way? And even outside of the whole spirit thing and what that brings to the story, Tasia has actually a lot when it comes to this episode. When it comes to her modern day self, she is really starting to get into the political campaign, and with only a month or two away, we start to learn a few things about her. For example, Jessica, that Star Ledger reporter, she's being paid by Tasia to look into everybody who she can find that was involved with that plane crash, so that Tasia doesn't one day get ambushed with questions about it. And as for something else we learn about Tasia, well, that'll be in topic 2, and when we talk about what happened when the girls started to realize that nobody was coming. So the second topic deals with the cabin by the lake. Now, this is titled The Cabin by the Lake because as everybody is led by Laura Lee to mourn those who died, Tasia decides she wants to get away from that and venture off a little bit. Because of this, she finds a lake, and even though Jackie doesn't really want to leave because she thinks, of course, be by the plane so you can get found more easily, the issue is when it comes to rations, they maybe have 3 days of water, and most of the girls, they rather not be by the dead bodies, by the crashed out plane. They rather go to a lake because it's a bit more of a fun environment. Because as shown wants to get to the lake, they're starting to strip a little bit, go into the water, and just enjoy themselves, get to be kids again, you know? But there are some problems with going to the lake. The first one is when it comes to Jackie, Tasia puts it to a vote whether or not to stay, and Jackie loses, so that's a sign that her influence over the girls that the coach thought that she had is dwindling quickly. The second issue is Ben, who, with him losing half of his leg, he can't move easily, so the girls have to lift him over there, which isn't a problem because these ladies are athletes. But one of the issues that do kind of start coming up when it comes to Ben is that Misty is so attentive of him, it makes you think that she has a very inappropriate crush. Which, considering she also cut off his leg, you can see is definitely creepy for Ben, to the point where later on, after they find the cabin, he gets frustrated with his life to the point when she's trying to calm him down, he strikes her. Now, granted, she just takes it, understands that he's going through stuff, and is able to calm down, but it definitely shows that everything's not good. But switching back to a positive note when it comes to this, as everyone's having fun at the lake, you can see that Tasia might be having her first little kindling of having interest in women, or else is, when it comes to the show, we're getting the first example of when Tasia might have shown of interest in women. Specifically in Van, who she doesn't say anything to, but you can tell by the looks that they have toward each other and the fact that we know Tasia is in a lesbian marriage in the future, that she definitely was probably interested in her, and it does kind of make you question, as we'll go into in the highlights, whether or not something happened. But besides Tasia starting to get a crush, when it comes to Travis, we learned that it seems because it's really only Travis, Javi, who is his little brother, and then Ben, who is a full-on adult. There's slim pickings for what is at least, a dozen girls. So with Travis being of age, him kind of having that brooding thing because his father just died, a lot of the girls are interested in him. Not every single one, but when it comes to Natalie and a few others, they're definitely looking at him at a different light. And you can see with Natalie, she's not she's not jealous, but she's definitely more aware that she's not the only one that sees something in him. But after a certain point, it's nighttime. The girls find this cabin, and the way they find this cabin is kind of in a weird way because they see like a flashing light. Like if you ever seen a war movie that deals with a sniper, and you see that light comes down at them, you can see a little flash in it. I don't know if I could reproduce it with my glasses because these lights are terrible, but the gist is a light. Light in the distance shows in the cabin. They get to the cabin, and again, it's one of those things. At first, everything is fine, and then night falls, and then things start to kind of get weird. Specifically, Charlotte, aka Lottie, gets weird, but also at this point, she's down to like one pill, and as shown in the first episode, she takes pills for schizophrenia amongst other things. Point is, Lottie feels weird about the cabin. Taissa tries to calm her down, but then in the middle of the night, Taissa wakes up. She hears stuff on the floorboards above them. Kind of confusing because when they went through the cabin before, they didn't know there was a way to get up there. So she goes up. She finds Charlotte kind of hunched up like she's like the killer in a horror movie. And then when she turns around, Taissa that is, she sees a skeleton in the attic. Now, whose skeleton's in the attic? Why is it in the attic? Hard to tell. Whether or not it dealt with that symbol that we keep that we keep seeing again is hard to tell. All we know for sure is that somebody died in that cabin, and with us being told previously that they were in that area for 19 months before they were discovered, we can't assume that maybe it was a vacation home or something like that. All we know is that somebody lived up there, somebody died up there, and whether or not they were killed or they just died of old age is hard to say. In topic 3, we get back to present day and we focus on Shauna, Adam, and Jeff, as well as Natalie, Misty, and Travis. To be honest, this topic is probably the one I'm least interested in, but just to be fair, we have to cover it. So, just to start off, Shauna pretty much has all the evidence she needs that Jeff is cheating on her. But strangely enough, while she's stalking Jeff and gets to the hotel that he's probably meeting his mistress at, Adam shows up, who just so happened to be getting a drink at the same hotel. And he decides, to kind of distract Shauna, who is trying to get the room number so she could really confront her husband, but it's not working well. So he intervenes, and those two end up having a lunch together. While they're having lunch, she sees Jeff walk with whoever he's messing around with. And it seems between that situation and Adam coming off like a decent guy, Shauna decides, if you're going to cheat on me, I'm going to cheat on you, tit for tat. As that's happening, you have Natalie and Misty, and Natalie knew that Misty was crazy, and she just finds more and more evidence by the day. For example, while they're driving to New Hampshire, they stop at a gas station, and Natalie goes into Misty's glove compartment and sees that Misty stole a piece of a car that made it so it wouldn't work. She confronts her about this later on. Misty gives some weak little reason, and apparently Natalie just like, okay, whatever. Which makes absolutely no sense, but I guess when you live with somebody for 19 months, seen them cut off somebody's leg and probably joined them in eating somebody else's body, you give a little bit of leeway. That's not funny. But again, they're on their way to New Hampshire. Natalie finds Misty, took a piece of her car, lets it go, and then they get to Travis's house. Travis is not in his house, so Natalie, being rough around the edges, she breaks in with Misty. Cops are called, and they get some details before the cops get there. They get where Travis works, and Misty also gets a message that Travis might have left for Natalie, or else he just wrote down and just... Well, actually, think about it. Either he wrote it down for Natalie to eventually discover, or maybe Misty made it because, she wants the investigation to continue. After all, it seems like her main contact with people is doing this detective work, so maybe she's just finding ways to further out this little adventure. She is crazy. But getting back to the point, because I'm going on way too many tangents. Those two end up in jail for breaking and entering to Travis's house. Natalie calls Taissa because, Taissa should be able to help her. But because Taissa already has issues with her Republican opponent coming after her, making it seem dangerous, and she's tempted to go back at him by using his daughter who was in and out of rehab, the last thing she needs is to use her connections or money to bail out her friend who she just paid to get into rehab. So Taissa's of no help. Luckily for Natalie and Misty, though, Misty has been masquerading as Natalie when talking to Kevin, the cop we meet in the last episode, who was the goth kid back in the past, and he uses his connections to get them out. Now, is Natalie happy about Misty faking that conversation with... Better said, is Natalie happy that Misty is pretending to be her to Kevin and saying who knows what? Absolutely not. But it still means it gets the job done, and it allows them to get back on the road and go to where Travis works, where unfortunately they see Travis is hanging, but he's hanging in a way where it doesn't look like he hung himself, but someone had him hung, which just spells the need to question what the hell is going on here. And also, could this be something that's related to the symbol, or is this just something else? Because we have no idea what Travis was into, and it seems like Travis was definitely into some stuff, so it could be something completely unrelated just to throw us off. So when it comes to this episode, the main highlight for us is what Taissa brings. In the past, and partly in the present, she brings a sort of supernatural element, which right now is the only thing we can go on when it comes to understanding what that symbol is about. In the past with her grandmother, we had that being that stole her grandmother's eyes. In the present day, we have this being that Sammy sees, that haunts him for whatever reason. And then when it comes to after the plane crash, there's the need to question if maybe, when it comes to that skeleton that's up in the attic, could that be something that just was drawn to Taissa in some way? Because the way it seems, Taissa always finds somebody who is connected to the spirit world, and they're the ones that are suffering. So when it comes to this situation, it seems like Lottie, because she has schizophrenia or takes antipsychotics for something. I don't know what specifically for, but either way, it seems like because of that mental illness, that Lottie has some type of connection to something that doesn't belong, or that something's weird. And when you look at the first episode, who got caught in that trap, it looks like it was Lottie. So it could very well be either one or two things. Either A, Lottie was starting to see stuff that was freaking everybody out, and because they lost their mind, they thought they had to sacrifice her. Or B, because Lottie was coming up with stuff that was freaking them out, and they started to believe her, Lottie's the reasons other people died. Now, of course, that theory that Lottie was the one that made them start killing people doesn't really fit in with the modern times, because we never see Lottie, but at the same time we don't see Van either. And thinking about that, you could always say that maybe something happened between Taissa and Van in the past. They got back home, and then things just didn't continue for whatever reason, and because of that, simply put, Taissa doesn't see Van, and we don't see Van because Van is Taissa's ex, and because of that, it's like Travis. We don't see Travis until now because that's Natalie's ex, and they had a bad breakup, so he moved far away from her and thus became a ghost. Granted, a dead one now, but when it comes to Van, it could just be Taissa and her broke up, didn't get together after all that trauma bonding, and thus when college came around, Van was gone and wanted nothing to do with anybody. And one last thing is the political campaign. Previous to this episode, I really did not give a damn about Taissa's political ambitions. However, now with us seeing how difficult and complicated that might be, it does bring in some interest. Whether it's the fact that Tasia's the one who who brought in Jessica, and also the need to question if Jessica's the one sending out postcards to just freak people out a little bit. Because, again, we don't really know how much Jessica knows. We just know that Jessica sees there's a story and that she's presenting an idea that people can get book deals and big figure money for their story. So, taking a note that Jessica is paid for by Tasia, there's also the fact that Tasia's in a political battle which isn't really leaning into her being a black woman, but you can tell her being considered dangerous and stuff like that makes her feel like it's a racial thing. And due to that, it does feel like Tasia's ready to stop throwing mud. And the fact that she's going to go after her opponent's daughter, who was in and out of rehab and had issues with heroin, while Natalie was somebody who possibly might have a story that mirrors that goal, it's not lost on me on how kind of messed up that is. Yet, it's politics, so her sticking with the issues would never have helped her that much, would it? As for on-the-fence topics, unfortunately, I want to really say it's the hetero relationships that are just right now not doing well. But I think it might be the relationships in general. I mean, even when it comes to Tasia and her wife, it seems like a marriage for political sakes because it looks better if somebody's married and single rather than those two really loving each other, trying to raise a child together and all that stuff. But even setting aside them, it's especially bad when it comes to Shauna and Jeff because what reason do you have to invest in their relationship, her revenge, or anything like that? Shauna messed with Jackie's off and on boyfriend for who knows how long. Jackie possibly died. She came back, got pregnant, and then I feel like their marriage is basically because she got pregnant. And now that they're middle-aged and he's not as interested in her anymore because it's not, I guess, spicy because they're not cheating or whatever, he's starting to move on. And granted, he's moving on in a very dirty, messed up way. But it's one of those things where they say the way you get them is how you lose them, and you can kind of see how that's playing out right now. And even if you want to factor in Adam and the kind of weirdness he brings into this, since he just knows how to show up and knows how to mess with Shauna to get what he wants out of her, like with the symbol thing, you kind of get that feeling that in the long term this may pay off, but right now it's just like I need more in order to enjoy and understand this. Which leaves Travis and Natalie, who I'm still feeling like Natalie's kind of trapped in a I'm not like other girls trope. And it sucks. Like, even the way when they explain the Travis situation, how we see it, Natalie's whole persona right now, her drive is about Travis. In the past, it's about Travis and defending him, making sure he's okay, and kind of like looking at him from a distance. And then in modern times, that was her main focus. She completely never mind Kevin, who was her old friend, maybe a good guy, might have interest in her, who knows. And she focuses strictly on Travis, who, the way Tasia talks about him, they had a toxic ass relationship where it seems he left because he realized they were no good together, which maybe threw her off the edge because she didn't get closure or something. But again, her life seems way too much revolving around Travis, and it's kind of stunting her as a character. But looking at how Tasia was in the last episode and how she was now, there's always that hope that maybe Natalie can bounce back. But at this time, like so much of the show, you kind of feel like I gotta wait for something to get better, for something to make sense. And while they're giving us little by little to kind of draw us in and hopefully keep us watching from week to week, I won't say it's a struggle because with having a week you have time to like think about all the theories and what could be happening. But I do think for people who are used to binge watching and getting their answers rather quickly, this is gonna be the type of show which is gonna get on their nerves a little bit.